Hey everyone, I'm Clayfects Face, and today we are going to make a trombone from the video game called Rimworld. Now, if you don't quite know what Rimworld is or what a trombone is, it's completely fine. It's this fluffy thing that hopefully are next to my finger right now. We are going to make this one more cute and also more realistic. And to put a cherry on top, we are also going to place two humanoids on the creature's back. So, without further ado, let's get started.
He took 100 pounds of clay, and then he said, hey listen, I'm gonna fix this world today, because I know what's missing.
Now, to my Clayfects out there that are thinking, but Clayfect, you don't like showing your face, and suddenly your face keep popping up all the time. How can that be? And the answer is pretty straightforward. We are trying to test the algorithm out to see what works for this channel and what doesn't. So please just bear with us for a little bit while we are experimenting and having fun. But with that, let's move on to the work I'm doing on our little trombone, where I'm slowly building up the base, hopefully making it look less like a potato and more like a llama with a halibut stuck in his face. Now, it is no secret that I am a huge fan of the Rimworld game, which is a survival base building game where you need to strategize and try to make your pawns, your survivors, well, survive in the wilderness of Rimworld. But even I, that consider myself an advanced Rimworld player, needs references when it comes to sculpting this mystical creature that I'm going to tell you more about later. So I called upon my assistant for help with the inspiration, and even though it didn't quite go as planned, I will say I think we sort of got there in the end, and I did feel more inspired, and if possible making me even more convinced that my assistant is a very good girl. But with me charged up with inspirations and references, I was finally ready to battle the fur. Now, when it comes to Rimworld's art, there is a lot of room for interpretation, since it is basically just blobs. I mean, not even the humans have hands or feet, that is why they are called pawns. But one thing that are very clear is the hairiness this creature have, as my assistant also very skillfully showed you. So after I've built a decent base for our trombone, I place clay doodad upon clay doodad before I scrape them. First with my dentist tool, and then with my homemade wire tool. When the legs were hairy enough, I moved on to the chest and the butt. And I did that to build a sort of hair base, you can say. So when I was going to put tufts of hair on his stomach, that the clay actually would have a place to lean on and not just flop around midair. At first glance, the trombone might seem like an easy sculpture to make, but an experienced sculptor probably saw by the first reference photo what sort of nightmare I've thrown myself into. Luckily for this video, however, I am not that experienced. So while I keep struggling with the fur, why don't I tell you a bit more about the trombone in general? The trombone is described as a gentle giant with a very graceful attitude. It's a kind herbivore that won't attack unless provoked. The trombone is known for its long, beautiful fur and its razor-sharp horn. Nobody knows where these mythical creatures originate from, but legend says that the oldest trombones are the wisest in the universe and they can speak. They simply choose not to. It is one of the toughest, if not the toughest creature in Rimworld. The fur and the horn does have such a high price that it is sort of a status symbol to have a tamed trombone in your colony. I can't even remember how many times me and Mr. Clayfects have battled just to be the first to tame a trombone to our colony. But that is pretty much all I know about the trombone. Now let's get back to the sculpture, where we quickly finish up the rest of the fur so our little fella can go in for his first bake. And I use the word little because even though the trombone is a giant creature, I actually think that we are dealing with a juvenile, if not a baby here. That doesn't change the fact, however, that our little guy needs a swan-like neck before we can get to work on the horn and the eyes. Now, the horn was actually one of the things I was mostly worried about sculpting. I mean, how do you make this axe halberd shaped horn look natural on a head? But it was actually not that difficult. When the base of the neck was done, I switched over to make this banana shape. I then shaped and cut, transforming it from a bad banana hopefully to something that looked sort of like a decent horn. And I did end up being very happy with it. That being said, however, I also have to say I did put out all the stops for this horn, since it is such a dominant feature for this creature. So not only did I profusely stroke it over and over again with clay softener, I also sanded it down to make it extra smooth after it had been baked. With the horn done and ready, I moved on to the eyes, where I gave a thin layer of shimmer before I painted them black. And with those two things ready to go, it was finally time to make the head. So while I'm doing that, and hopefully giving it a gentle expression, taking the nature of this creature into consideration, this might be a good time to ask you to like, comment and subscribe if you like videos like this. And to all my Clayfuls out there, I do want to give a special thanks this time. It feels so good to be back, and I just can't wait to see in the comments what you got to say about this project. You guys really possess this awesomeness that helps me keep going. That is simply just a fact. So why don't we keep going and give this trombone hopefully a sort of cute face. Now, the most difficult part about the head was the horn, making it look sort of okay and begging that it would look even greater with fur on it. However, I will admit I did have some help from my assistant that for some reason or another was very invested in this project. But with the head on, it was time for, yet again, you guessed it, more texturing. Even though it was not quite well shown by my assistant, if you look at the top of the head on the trombone, then you can see the head is very spiky, standing sort of upwards. And since I didn't want our little trombone to look a mix between a halberd, a llama and a porcupine, and I couldn't be satisfied with a Bart Simpson cut, I end up settling with this 50s Elvis style haircut for our little trombone, which of course gave me no other choice than to name him just that, Elvis. Now, I picture our little Elvis, even though he is a rambunctious guy from time to time, also is a very gentle creature. And the reason I think that is because it is actually my plan to place 2 pawns on his back riding. But it is not just 2 boring generic pawns from the game. No. We are going to make them in the Rimworld style, but again more realistic. And to put a cherry on top of it, I am going to make them me and Mr. Clayfect. Or maybe I should say Angusti and Dolina. Since that is our names for our avatars. Because yeah, we are just that much of a pair of geeks. Now, for those of you who have followed me for a while, knows that I am not very adept at making human faces. So making so tiny human faces didn't bring a smile on my face. But since they are not completely human and are more like these pawn blobs, I feel like I can get away with it. So I started with Dolina's face, simply because it was the most difficult face to make. Like most other gamers, my avatar is an expression of what I want to be, and not quite what I am. So Dolina is a very spontaneous person that lives in the moment. However, just like me, she also loves animals. So if she got a chance to ride a trombone, she would have a huge smile on her face, even after riding the trombone for 3 hours. Which is pretty much what I picture they are doing. Which is also why I made Angusti's face look more like a man that has given up on life. He probably did enjoy the first hour riding on Elvis, but right now it's just being ridiculous, and he is debating with himself if he's going to tell Dolina that it's time to get off. Especially because he sort of have this feeling that convincing Dolina to get off the trombone is not going to be easy. Now with the base of the faces done, I pop them into the oven before I start working on a blanket for our little Elvis. I decided to give him a blanket because I want to be able to take Dolina and Angusti off him. So I had the possibility to enjoy Elvis without Dolina's excitement, you can say. Speaking of excitement, or the lack thereof, when the heads were baked, it was time to give Angusti his signature beard and hairstyle. And I have to say, I really had fun with this, especially in the process, because I got a chance to see how Rimworld version of my husband would look when he's an old man. And I have to say, I still sort of dig it, guys. But now with Angusti's hair finished, I moved on to cursing and swearing at Dolina's hair. Now I am definitely not a hairstylist. I really don't care that much about hair. So even giving her this loose ponytail was quite challenging for me. There might have been just a little bit of a big sigh of relief, guys, when the heads were finally finished and I could bake them and move on to the bodies. First, figuring out how I should position them without making it look like a clip from a dirty movie. Before I shape the bodies, making mine look more like an hourglass, because we are talking about a Rimworld avatar here, and making Mr. Clayfects' avatar looking more like a square. I decided to make Dolina tip to the side, eagerly petting Elvis, and make Angusti holding Dolina so she wasn't going to fall off. Making them positioned like that did not only bring life to the sculpture, but also showed how me and Mr. Clayfect are when we game together. I am usually, that type of child that always get into troubling situations, even when they try not to. Lucky for me, however, one of my biggest gamer ability is to know when and how to run away from situations. So that is my usual tactic. Unlucky for my husband, however, because he is always the good guy that tries to save me from myself, which often ends being fatal for him. Oh, that poor man. I don't know how he puts up with me guys from time to time. In geek terms, he is really lawful good, while I am chaotic neutral. Which is also what I'm trying to show with the clothes we are wearing. I am giving Dolina my classical gamer clothes and a leather jacket to wear to show her inner rebel, while I'm giving Angesty a more practical set of clothes and a shirt, because my husband looked good in a shirt. Come to think of it, when I hear it out loud, I might have overthinked this whole sculpture thing, but at least I had fun with it after the texturing. So while I'm continuing making our little avatars, I actually have some news to share with ya. You see, hopefully when this video uploads, I am actually also going to have a Clayfect website. My lovely husband, Mr. Clayfect, have been a busy bee, so it's not just a website where there's going to be links to my videos. There's also going to be some information about us to all my curious Clayfuls out there, and whatever small gifts we can bring ya. Like the blueprint for the trombone horn that my assistant was wearing earlier is on the website completely free for anyone who wants to release their inner trombone. And when my lovely husband makes other blueprints for me, it is also going to be on the website so you can print it out. Again, still completely free. And that is not all, that is just the first things we are going to put on the website. So if you are feeling up to it, please go check it out. Though not right now. Right now we are finishing up with the finer details on our small avatars before we are finally ready to position Angesty and Dolina. Now, when I designed this sculpture in my head, which is usually how I do with sculptures, I hadn't planned on making it look like Elvis is giving Dolina a side eye. But now it's actually one of my favorite aspects of this sculpture. Because when Dolina and Angesty is not on poor Elvis's back, then it actually just looked like a picture perfect trombone. But when you put them on, it does look like he is giving her a bit of a side eye, and I just think it's perfect given the situation I have described to you. So I was very happy when it was finally time to start painting. First, I purplified the blanket before I got to work on the legs. Slowly building my way up with this part of the sculpture, simply because I was so nervous. Since I'm not very adept at making humans, I am also not very trained in painting them, which means skin colors is not a thing I'm used to working with. But I did my best and tried to match me and Mr. Clayfects' skin colors as much as possible, which is why Dolina does look an awful more white than Angesty. But with the skin colors done, I started painting the tops that I painted so they matched our eyes before I got to work on Angesty's hair. And for the first time in my marriage, I actually cursed my husband's golden locks, because I needed 9 different colors. 9 to make his hair color look sort of decent, while my Dolina only needed 2 guys. 2. Brown and red. That was it. Now some might be thinking that I forgot the gray in Dolina's hair. And to them, the only thing I can say is, we are not going to talk about that. No, we are going to finish up Angesty and Dolina before we move on to little Elvis. Or more correctly, moved back to Elvis. Because I did try to paint him once before, but I am going to save you that horror show, where it took twice as long to remove all the paint as it took to paint him. So instead we are going to skip ahead to where I'm giving him a white base coat, before I moved on to give him a light blue wash, so I didn't lose all that lovely texture that I worked so hard on. Now in the first attempt, my biggest mistake was using too thick paints, making the texture almost completely disappear. So in my round 2 with Elvis, I used paints that were not just more pigmented, but also paints that were a lot thinner. And with his fur looking finally somewhat acceptable, I could move on to the horn and the nails, painting them a pearlescent white, giving our little guy this magical and fantasy-ish look that I was going for. And with his mani-pedi looking shinier than ever, I started to play around with some pink colors in order of giving some more life to our little Elvis. I have to say, this sculpture was really a challenge. Not in skill, but in stubbornness, so to speak, because it took so long time with all the texturing, sculpting the small heads, and let's not forget the painting and repainting. It was tough, but it was also worth it. I was so happy when Elvis was done. And with that, guys, I think that is it for these sculptures and it for this video.
Gotta leave it all behind. Engines burn and blow your mind. Waiting for the sun. How many seasons pass you by?
Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time, but if you can wait until next time, why not click on the square to right, where you're going to see a year deer get made. But until then, as we would say in Denmark, hold dig munter.